Okay, in the last lecture, we concluded that productivity and wage level going together. Right? Now, next section is misconceptions about comparative advantage. Number one misconception is this. Free trade is beneficial only if a country is more productive than foreign countries. This argument is absolute advantage story, isn't it? And we already know that this is not true. Free trade is beneficial only if a country is more productive than absolute advantage than foreign country. That is first one misconception. Right? But even an unproductive country, developing country, for example, benefit from free trade by avoiding the high cost for goods that it would otherwise have to produce domestically. We already know comparative advantage story. Some countries who has absolute disadvantage in both goods can enjoy comparative advantage in one good. Okay? High costs derive from inefficient use of resources factors. The benefit of free trade do not depend on absolute advantage. Rather, they depend on comparative advantage, specializing in industries that use factors more efficiently. Okay, so number one misconception is absolute advantage story. And next slide. Second misconception is this. Free trade with countries that pay low wages hurt high wage countries. Simply talking, developed countries featured by higher wages than the other should be hurted from free trade. Okay, this is mainly argumented by the developed countries, but this is not true. While trade may reduce wages for some workers in developing countries, thereby affecting the distribution of income within country, trade benefit consumers and other workers, right? So consumers' welfare increase because in some goods, consumer can purchase some comparative disadvantage good with a cheaper cost, cheaper price than autarky situation, okay? And the wage rate in comparative advantage sector increased definitely. Consumers benefit because they can purchase goods more cheaply, importing goods with a cheaper price than domestically produced one. Okay? And producers and workers benefit by earning a higher income in the industries that use factors more efficiently, allowing them to earn higher price and wages. We already know this. We also calculate some wage rate after trade. That increase definitely in developed countries, right? So number two argument is misconception. Number three, free trade exploits less productive countries whose workers make low wages, right? That means this kind of argument is very popular in developing countries, right? So developing countries' productivity is very low, so free trade with developed country leading to disaster, right? So if this one developed further in politics, then this argument is linked to imperialist idea, right? But everybody knows that this is not true. We already studied this from numerical example. While labor standards in some countries are less than exemplary compared to Western standards. For example, developing countries' wage rate is too low from the perspective of Western standards. But this is true, right? They are so with or without trade. Anyway, their wage rate is very low. Why? Wage rate and productivity going together, right? So their wage rate is very low because of low productivity. It is not linked to trade at all. high wages and safe labor practice alternatives to trade. If wage rate increase, for example, then what happens in developing countries? The result is deeper poverty and exploitation, right? This one may result without export production. Poverty and exploitation is a result of low productivity, not because of export, free trade. Consumers benefit from free trade by having access to cheaply produced goods. So developing countries' consumers' welfare increase because they also can purchase some good with cheaper price than domestically produced one, right? Producers, workers benefit from having higher profit and or wages. We already calculated this. For example, in foreign countries, wage rate also increase after free trade. In earlier numerical example, wage rate in developed at the same time, wage rate in developing countries also increase after free trade, right? So this argument, imperialist idea, is misleading. But unfortunately, 90-50% of world political leaders still believe this misconception. And next section is comparative advantage with many goods, but I'd like to skip it. Anyway, until now we studied using simplistic model with two good model, right? So this two good model can expand it to n good model, right? There exists lots of good, but conclusion is same. So I'd like to skip this. Moving. Empirical evidence, the final section, right? Do countries export those goods in which their productivity is relatively high? That is some argument, right? Do countries export goods where their productivity is relatively high? This should be true based on the Ricardian model, right? So, but all the arguments should be verified empirically in economics. So here, the example of U.S. to British exports. The ratio of U.S. to British exports in 1951 compared to the ratio of U.S. to British labor productivity in 26 manufacturing industries suggests yes. So X variable is U.S. productivity divided by British productivity. Y variable is U.S. exports to British exports. Okay? So then if we can find positive relations in X, Y, then we can conclude that countries export goods where their productivity is relatively high, right? At this time, the U.S. had an absolute advantage in all 26 industries. Yeah, the ratio of exports was low in the least productive sectors of the U.S., right? The ratio of exports was low, very low in the least productive sectors, in comparative disadvantaged sectors, and vice versa. Look at this graph. Y variable is ratio of U.S. to British exports. X variable is ratio of U.S. to British productivity, right? And the dotted line is the actual value, and straight line is fitted value estimated by econometrics. Okay? Then we know that X increase, Y increase. We can find positive relation, right? That means countries tend to export in the sectors where the relatively higher productivity sectors, right? In comparative study showed that U.S. exports were high relative to British exports in industries where the U.S. has a high relative labor productivity. Each dot represents a different industries. A very poor country like Bangladesh can have comparative advantage in clothing, despite being less productivity in clothing than other countries, such as China, because it is even less productive compared to China in other sectors, right? So Bangladesh has absolute disadvantage in all the sectors compared to China. But Bangladesh has a comparative advantage in some more productivity, relatively more productivity sector. Okay, productivity in Bangladesh is only 28% of China's on average. However, in apparel, productivity in Bangladesh was about 77% of China, so absolute disadvantage, but relatively productive than other sectors, creating strong comparative advantage in apparel for Bangladesh. And that is a summary table we studied just before. The main implication of the Ricardian model are well supported by empirical evidence. So number one, productivity differences play an important role in international trade. Differences in productivity or technology is reason for trade between countries, right? And number two, comparative advantage matters for trade instead of absolute advantage. Okay? That is a conclusion and a result of empirical evidence. Then summary skipped. Then only one section left, right? That is, I skipped just one section until now. That is relative demand and relative supply story. Starting from slide number 42. Relative 43. For example, like this. The conclusion is this one, right? So, and this one explained from, starting from uh, 35, slide number 35, determining relative price after trade. I'd like to explain this using graphs. Okay? So first, we can think about what is relative demand and what is relative supply. Right? So now think about partial equilibrium analysis. Demand for good one, D1, right? In our some notation, demand for good one is consumption of good one. So now think about C1. That is D1, demand for good one, right? This is just function of its price, isn't it? That is partial equilibrium analysis. Right? If relative demand for this, for example, in the case where there exists two goods, demand for good one, C1, demand for good two, C2, then relative demand for good one is C1 over C2. Okay? That should be function of P1 relative price of good one, P1 over P2, isn't it? That is relative demand of one good. Okay? But in our simplistic model, there exist two goods, right? Foreign countries also, foreign consumers also demand good one, C1 star, and good two, C2 star. Then, world relative demand after free trade is like this, C1 plus C2 divided by, C1 plus C1 star, C2 plus C2 star. That is relative demand after free trade when there exists two countries, two good model, right? C1 plus C1 star, C2 plus C2 star. That is relative demand, isn't it? And we also know that after free trade, relative price of two goods equal in both countries, right? Then relative demand is just function of P1 over P2 after trade like this. That is relative demand. And the law of demand said, so now think about this one. Y variable then is P1 over P2 after free trade. X variable is relative demand, right? That should be shaped like this. That is relative demand, isn't it? Relative demand is negative function of relative price of good one. That is relative demand. So everybody knows that relative demand in this Ricardian model. So this kind of thing can be same in relative supply. Now think about supply of good one in partial equilibrium analysis. That means Q1. Supply is production, isn't it? So Q1 is function of good one. That is, and positive relations, right? Then, if one country has two good, relative supply of good one is Q1 divided by Q2. That is also function of P1 over P2, positive relations, isn't it? Right? Then, relative supply when the world consists of two countries is this one. Q1 plus Q1 star, Q2 plus Q2 star. Okay? That is relative supply. Right? After trade, so T should be here. Right? More exactly talking. That is should be function of P1 over P2 T. Right? And we know usually relative supply curve shaped like this. Right? After free trade. Relative supply is like this. Right? Then demand and supply same at here. That is equilibrium price after free trade. And that is quantity, relative demand, equal to relative supply at this price, this one. Right? That is the whole story of this section. And the final conclusion of this one is this one. Relative demand curve is like this, and relative supply curve in this example shaped like this because we assume two-good model. Right? And that is relative demand. Can you understand? After free trade, relative demand is this one, and we also assume that in earlier case, home and foreign consumers have same preference, right? In other words, same indifference map, same utility function, right? Two countries, relative demand structure is perfectly same. So relative demand of one country, home, relative demand of home should be equal to relative demand by foreign, right? Should be equal to relative demand at world market. Same. So that is relative demand. Relative supply curve is this case because there exists only two goods. Then now I'd like to explain why relative supply curve is shaped like this. Right? Okay. Space is problem, right? Now think about in our earlier numerical example, right? Earlier example. Now think about earlier numerical example. That equilibrium price was $12. Price of good one after free trade, $12. Price of good two was also $12. So P1 over P2 is 1. Right? Like this. Why? Equilibrium price is here, equilibrium quantity here. I'd like to explain using that kind of numerical example. Right? In earlier numerical example, home countries, where can I draw? Here. Home countries, Q1, Q2, production possibility frontier was shaped like this, right? That is production possibility frontier in home country. That is AL1 Q1 plus AL2 Q2 is L bar. In other words, that is equal to Q2 was equal to L bar over 2 minus AL1, AL2, Q1, isn't it? That is production possibility frontier in home. Right? And foreign countries' production possibility frontier was shaped like this, steeper than this. For example, like this. Right? Foreign countries' production possibility frontier was Q2 star was L star bar over AL2 star, AL2 star, AL1 star, Q1 star. Right? And in our numerical example, AL1 is 1, AL2 was 2. The slope is half. Right? In foreign, AL1 star was 6, AL2 star was 3. So slope of PPA, production possibility frontier, was 2. That was half. Okay? That kind of thing. And in autarky situation, production occurred. Right? In autarky situation, P1A, in autarky situation, we assume that think about value maximization problem in autarky situation. Right? The equilibrium condition at the time, AL1, that is production possibility frontier. At the same time, this was, there was red one. Red one was ISO value line. Right? This ISO value line means Q2. P1 Q1 plus P2 Q2 is V. Right? Rewriting this Q2A is equal to VA over P2A minus P1A over P2A, autarky price, and Q1A, isn't it? Right? So in autarky situation, we assume that production possibility frontier coincides with ISO value line. So every point on this PPF should be autarky equilibrium production bundle subtotal. Okay? Anyway, we know that P1A over P2A is equal to AL1 over AL2 in autarky, in home. Similarly, in foreign, right? Autarky maximized ISO value line is this red one. That is Q2 star A is equal to V star autarky divided by P2 star autarky minus P1 star autarky minus P2 star autarky and Q1 star autarky. And we know that AL1 over AL2 star is equal to P1 star A over P2 star A. Right? In autarky situation, AL1 over AL2 is equal to P1A over P2A. In foreign, AL1 star is equal over AL2 star should be equal to P1 star A over P2 star A. Right? And in our numerical example, that was 2. This one is equal to 2. Right? In home, P1 star A, P1A over P2A should be equal to half. Equal to AL1 over AL2 was half. Can you understand? Right? That is autarky situation. Now, two countries start trade. Then what happened? Right? So we know from here, home country has comparative advantage in Q1. Right? And so after trade, price of good one, P1, T, greater than price of comparative advantage good in home. So P1 increase. Right? Why? Foreign consumers demand domestically produced Q1. Right? So demand increase, so price of good one increase. Also, same time, price of good two decrease. Right? Why? Domestic consumers demand foreign produced Q2. Why? Cheaper. Okay? So that kind of thing happening in home. P1 over P2 increase. So this directly means P1 over P2 increase. P1T over P2T should be higher than P1A over P2A. In other words, that is greater than half. Okay? So, actually that is half. What is this? AL1 over AL2, P1A over P2A. Right? Half. So, equilibrium price after free trade should be higher than half. Why? Price increase. Can you understand? And then what happened in foreign? Foreign country has comparative disadvantage in Q1 and comparative advantage in Q2. So the opposite thing happened. In Otaki, price was 2. AL1 over AL2 star or P1 star A over P2 star A was 2. This one decreased. Why? P2 star increase, P1 star decrease. Price of comparative advantage would increase, price of comparative disadvantage would decrease. So P2 over P1 increase. In other words, P1 over P2 in foreign decrease. Right? In Otaki situation, that was 2. After trade, relative price decline. The opposite thing happened in home. In Otaki situation, P1 over P2 was half. Right? In Otaki. But after trade, this one increased. Greater than half. Okay? So this one is actually Otaki price or slope of MRT in 40. That is equal to, everybody knows that now, AL1 star over AL2 star or P1 star A over P2 star A. So equilibrium price after trade should be in between. Right? And then I'd like to explain that kind of thing. Right? Otaki price in home, relative Otaki price in home half. Otaki relative price in foreign was 2 in our numerical example, 2 half. Equilibrium price should be in between. Can you understand? So there are lots of cases, but I'd like to explain. I said that is one in between. Okay? I'd like to, why that happened? I'd like to explain this a minute later. Okay, now think about this case. So, anyway, we know the conclusion, but P1 over P2T, that is P1 star T over P2 star T, because P1T is equal to P1 star T of the trade, right? This one is smaller than this. P1A star over P2A star, or simply AL1 star over AL2 star, right? That is Otaki. How can I say? This one is slope of MRT in foreign, right? Or this one is but higher than this. So after free trade, price should be in between, right? This condition satisfied, then we can see AL1 over AL2. That was half. That was 2 in our numerical example, right? Then what happened? That is Otaki situation. But after free trade, price is located like this, right? Then what happened? We can explain using this one. Anyway, P1 over P2 changes, then home countries have to solve value maximization problem again. Why? Slope over P1 over P2 is, that was half in Otaki situation. Now greater than half, right? Then what happened? For example, 2/3, right? Then production possibility frontier is same in value maximization problem. No reason to change it. But ISO value line now changes like this. Right? ISO value line changes like this. Slope increase. P1 over P2 is greater than AL1 over AL2 or half. Right? Then home country solve the utility maximization problem again. when slope is greater than half. Okay? Then we know that value maximization solution happen at this point. Right? That is value maximization point. In other words, in this situation, home country only produce Q1. Right? Only produce Q1. What is this point? Right? That this point is all L bar, all factors. Right? All labors employed in sector 1 only. Right? To produce maximum Q1. So, production of Q1 in this situation, production of Q1 is this one, right? Corner solution. And production of Q2 is equal to 0. Right? Then what happened in foreign? Foreign countries case, what happened? Originally, slope of P1 over P2 was 2. But now, that is 2. But after trade price is smaller than 2. Decreased from 2. Right? Then, foreign MRT, production possibility frontier, same. But iso value line, slope of iso value line, P1 over P2, decrease. Right? So shaped like this. Then, what is the value maximization solution? This point, isn't it? Right? And that is new iso value line. Maximize iso value line. And production occurred at this point. What's the meaning of this? Foreign countries just specializing in production of good 2. Okay? So maximum production of good 2. That is L star bar over AL2 star. Right? And the production of good 1 should be equal to 0. Right? In this situation, foreign countries' production of good 1 is equal to 0. Production of good 2 is L star bar over AL2 star. Right? That kind of thing happen. Then we can calculate relative supply. In this situation, relative supply is equal to Q1 plus Q1 star, Q2 plus Q2 star. Q1 star is equal to L bar over AL1. Q1 star is equal to 0. Right? Q2 is equal to 0. Q2 star is L star bar over AL2 star, isn't it? Simply talking, this one is equal to L bar over AL1, L star bar over AL2. Right? So, after trade price is in between, should be in between, right? Then, relative supply is this one. Just constant number, isn't it? That is constant numbers. Price is here, relative supply is here, this one, right? That is L bar over AL1, L star bar over AL1 star. Can you understand? That is case 3 or something in our textbook. Okay? The other case, for example, after free trade price is equal to this, for example, this kind of thing happen. Right? AL1 over AL2. After trade price is equal to half, saying to Otaki equilibrium price in home. Then what happened? This means P1 over P2 is half, simply talking. Right? Then home countries face this kind of problem. So conclusion is same in Otaki situation. Home can choose production point at any point in this PPL. Right? So home countries, some points from 0 to something, 0 to something. Anyway, home country can produce 2 good. Then what happened in foreign? Foreign countries, right? Foreign countries face this kind of thing. This one still matter, right? Price is half, right? After trade price is half, and that is Otaki price in foreign, 2. Half is smaller than 2. Right? Then, anyway, I have to solve this kind of. So, iso value line, slope half. That is PPL. Slope is half. Then what happened in foreign? Foreign countries still produce only good 2. Right? So this one is same. Then we can calculate the relative supply. Then we can get this kind of curve, straight line, when price is equal to half, right? Foreign production, foreign relative supply, same, but home production supply can move at any point is possible in this PPL, right? The other case is relative price, P1 over P2T is equal to 2, right? Equal to 2. Then also we can get this kind of infinite numbers. So we can, anyway, in conclusion, relative supply is like this, relative demand is like this, after free trade. Then we can find quantity demanded, relative quantity demanded, and relative quantity supply become same. That is equilibrium price, P1T over P2T. And in our numerical example, that was $12 to $12, so equal to 1. Okay? Then I finish chapter 3, everything chapter 3, right? So, and next week we study Heckscher model, chapter 5. Okay, I'd like to stop here. Thank you very much.